You can see how I mentioned Amalree has a different climate. If you were to step out of the car right now, you would find the temperature was about 8 or 9 degrees lower than it is 10 miles down the road. And with that wind that's howling, the added wind chill would probably bring that outside temperature down to around -2, and it's only September. And if you're on the mountains, for every 1,000 feet you ascend, at any time of the year actually, the temperature drops by a further 3 degrees. And the wind velocity increases the higher you reach the mountain tops. So when you ascend these mountains, like I do, and many other people do for that matter, when you reach the ridgeline, that's the exposed ridgeline from whatever way the wind's blowing, you will find that the temperature over there has fallen another 6 degrees, 6 to 8 degrees Celsius. And with the increased wind velocity, the temperature on the summits can be unbearably cold, even for a few moments. And when you go up there on winter days, when the temperature in the valleys are around 5 degrees, you can find the temperature on the tops can be blowing around -10 degrees. Sometimes even colder. So when I'm on the very high mountains in the winter, sometimes the temperature can be -17 degrees. And it becomes quite difficult to negotiate in the wind at those temperatures. It becomes very challenging. Very difficult indeed. But that is where a lot of the strength and stamina and mindfulness comes from. When you're faced with the dilemma of ascending and then descending a high mountain in difficult terrain and in poor weather conditions, in the cold and the wet and the wind, it gives you a brand new inner strength, a new perspective on everything, on your own fragility, and on your own abilities. And when you're faced with emotional issues, like I have, from the unnecessary sources of the last 16 weeks. It gives you the additional strength and ability to cope with that, because you've been through so much. Because you've had to deal with your own turmoil when facing almost certain death on some of these exposed mountain ridges when it's cold and wet and windy. But even saying that when you're in a challenged environment like the high mountain tops is nothing in comparison to the loss of someone that you love, when they tell you for no reason at all they don't want to see you ever again. They don't want to hear from you or communicate with you ever again. So for example, if I had reached some of the very high mountains just west of where I'm sitting, and I had received a communication like that. Let me just put up a picture of one of these wintry scenes from the high mountains from this year. So if I had perhaps received a communique of that nature to say, I don't want to see you ever again, I don't want to communicate with you ever again, I just telling you without any explanation. If you'd received maybe a text like that when you were on the mountains and you were emotionally attached to this person because you loved them, there's a very great chance, very strong chance indeed, that you may just sit down in the snow, exposed to the wind and the wet and the cold. You may just sit down and give up completely. Because there would be no rationale to the communication. There would be nothing that you could pinpoint or examine as to why this communique had occurred. And therefore, when you're struck down emotionally like that, you need a lot of strength. You need a lot of willpower. You need a lot of willingness to overcome something like that. So it's a two-way thing, isn't it? You have the strength and willpower, and you have the ability. But when it's something that breaks your heart, then it's most likely you would just sit down in the snow, in the ice, in the wet and the cold, When there's a turn around in your emotions, it's been very, very difficult, I have to tell you. It's been almost as bad as a bereavement, that's the truth. Losing somebody for no reason that you care about. For absolutely no reason whatsoever. When there's a turn around in your emotions, it's very difficult, I have to tell you. It's been almost as bad as a bereavement, that's the truth.